Second grade spelling homework filled me with rage. At 8 years old, I would actively sit at my off-white desk with gold trim, fuming about these mimeographed pages with words to rewrite, define, and write in a sentence for the love of all that's holy. And this ridiculousness was blocking me from running outside or doing any other kind of after school fun. There was no playing outside or resting until my spelling assignment for the day was finished. And Mrs. Weaver gave us spelling homework every day. I lived in a prison. A bit dramatic much? Okay, so maybe just a little. Although this practice that my mother required of me, I did learn some great things from that jail cell. But there was also an unhelpful lesson I learned, that the real drama playing out in the minds of leaders everywhere. I see it continuing all over. You must be productive in order to have fun or experience joy. And as a culture, we value productivity over humanity. We see it in art, from Cinderella to Little House on the Prairie. We relentlessly measure output so we can fraction off people. We have a 0.75 FTE, a full-time employee, based on production. You often accrue, meaning you have to earn your paid time off or your vacation days based on how long you have worked. And we've internalized it as well. It shows up in your brain as, I can't relax until this job is done. Taking a break means I'm lazy. I'll just get ahead on these things and then I'll rest. I'll be able to go have fun or relax when I achieve this goal. Fun is a luxury. I just can't afford that. Or when the kids are older, or when this project, blah, blah, blah. All of those things are that concept internalized in our brains. And it's no wonder we're exhausted. And burnout rates are up 12% over the last 4 years. If you have to earn joy, when is it enough? When is it enough? Most leaders think joy at work is just a nice to have. Let's just sprinkle a little fun when the real work is done. Because that's not what you're here for. But let me tell you this, that thinking is killing you and your team, because joy at work produces results. Joy is a leadership strategy. Leadership success isn't about squeezing every bit of more efficiency out of your people and yourself. It's about creating an environment where joy fuels productivity. And so that's what we're talking about on the podcast today. So welcome to Joyosity. I'm so glad that you're joining us. If you are new here, or if you're a seasoned leader, or you're just starting out, Joyosity is the community for you. So we base everything that we do on these 3 bedrock beliefs. True leadership requires more than just surface level strategies. It requires a profound commitment to everything that makes us human. Number 2, we use genuine curiosity so we can create positive culture with complex people. Because listen, folks, complex people, that's all you got to work with. And joy is the heartbeat of a healthy leader and a healthy organization. So we're putting it front and center. And every week on Joyosity, we've got dynamic conversations with experts and leaders sharing more than just a couple tips to help you lead well. We're really building a movement with you based on hard-won wisdom, real-life experience, and leading research. So I'm Jenn Whitmer, international speaker, leadership consultant, and all-around joy bringer, hosting you and guiding you along the way. Together, we'll move from these ideas that we talk about to embracing the action that is required to face the challenges of this ever-changing world. So I only have one drink. Usually there's more, but I've got my water. Get your multiple beverages and get ready, because we're going to dive in to this idea. And we're going to start with a story. So Isaac was newly promoted as leader, and he is leading a team of about 20, 25 folks. And he's an experienced at what he was doing, but he was a new leader, and his performance was tanking. And the rest of the team was getting more and more stressed while that was happening. And so one of his leaders basically took him out for a little while, and they showed up at a soccer field. Now, you may recognize this story as Isaac and Roy Kent from Ted Lasso, but it still applies. So he showed up at a pickup football soccer game, and he started playing. And when he started playing, he remembered his purpose as captain of the team. He remembered that this was a game and it should be fun, even though it was serious business in the economy and his own pocketbook. But he had to play and genuinely have joy in what he was doing in order to perform his job well. And that counts for you too. Because this leadership myth is out here. Oh, and if you haven't seen the rest of the episode, the performance goes up for him and the entire team. And this dispels this myth of leadership that we have, that seriousness equals success and playfulness is unprofessional. I know that we hear it all the time. I talk about joy at work every day, and I talk about play all the time. And I still hear that in my brain because it's so ingrained in our culture. I know that some of it comes from my second grade homework, but this idea that you have to be serious in order to be successful is really draining you. So my question for you is, who told you that? Where did that come from for you? And why do we think that works? Because here's the reality check. High-performing teams don't just tolerate joy, they require it. Research shows that when we have joy at work, that we collaborate well together, retention is higher, you have better ideas, you collaborate more efficiently, and you have increased innovation and 25% more productivity if one person is experiencing joy. It costs us if we have joyless leadership. It costs us all. If you're not, as the leader, having joy and you think that seriousness is the only way to get it done, or if you can't play until the work is done, that is joyless leadership, and it's costing you employee engagement. People are like, well, I mean, I guess I don't really want to be here. And so they check out, or they just give just enough, just enoughers out there. You've got productivity then tanks, and then your turnover skyrockets because someplace else is going to be more fun, and I can feel engaged and meaningful about what I'm doing. People will even take a pay cut for that. So this myth is impacting us significantly in the workforce. And here's the thing we often get wrong about joy. So when I was a teacher, we got special days. These were the best days as a teacher. Jeans days. You could wear jeans. Sometimes it would be jeans day on Friday. Sometimes it was like the Cardinals are in the playoffs and we got to wear jeans with a jersey, something like that. It was like a gift from on high. And things like that, I call a joy juke. It's just a juke. It's casual Friday, jeans day, forced fun, muffins in the break room. Those are little pockets of fun. I love tiny joys at the end of my emails that I send people every week. There's tiny joys. I get that. But thinking that that is real joy, that is going to cost us more because it's a joy juke. It's like, well, I gave you this thing. Now sacrifice everything. And that isn't leadership. When you experience real joy, where you feel connected to purpose, when the impact of your work is something greater than just you, and you have this ability to sustain that, that's real joy because it's rooted. When you create that type of environment, what shows up, like the symptoms of that, are your employees and the team members and you yourself feel valued, connected, and energized by what you're doing. So we incorporate how people feel. It's an integrated part of how we lead because joy isn't just fun. Joy is that deep connection. It's the heartbeat of motivation because, again, without it, people just clock in, did my stuff, and leave. And they're mildly miserable in the process. So my question for you is, do you think your team feels that? Do they feel valued? Do they feel connected to purpose? Do they feel energized what they're doing? Or are they just surviving the work? And I'm going to push you a little harder and ask you to ask them, because you can make assumptions based on your own bias and your own cognitive dissonance to protect yourself. So be brave to get curious and ask them. And the other thing about this is, often those of you who are listening to me right now are what I call the smushed leader. The squeeze is real. But the way that we're coping with that is really hurting us. So I was working with a client, and I work with their team and inside the organization, and they, as the leader, just kept saying, well, I have to do that. Well, I have to do that. Well, I have to do that. I can't expect them to do that. I have to do that. And I knew, because of this person's character and lots of conversations, that it wasn't because they thought they knew it all and necessarily could do it better. And they were not the head leader. I was working throughout the organization. They were not the head leader. And I was working with this leader who is in that smushed category. They're managing up and managing down. And so finally I asked, because they kept saying, I can't expect them to do that. So I asked them, why can your leader expect that of you? And I have noticed this problem in many leaders and in many organizations. You're smushed. And here's the trap of the smushed leader that's preventing and blocking joy. Number one, the concept of this is good, but in practice, it's going to cause you problems. You are trying to shield your team from upper management chaos. All the kind of ideating and all the things that I know that I'm guilty of as a visionary, you as the smushed leader are trying to protect your team from it. And so you're trying to shield them from that chaos. In intention, that is fantastic. But what happens is that you start absorbing the stress, and then you don't have an outlet because your team is stressed as well, because they sense that something is wrong, but they don't have a lot of clarity. And they don't necessarily feel seen because you're also shielding them from above and not passing things along, because you're just saying, they say jump and you say how high. And then you're like telling your team, I guess this is what we have to do. So you're absorbing it all, and there's stress from both sides and there's nowhere for it to go. And when you feel like you're in that trap, you are feeling like you have to be the responsible adult in the room and everybody else gets to lose their minds. And here's what that's costing you. When you are the workplace shock absorber, you are actually losing your team's trust, because you're so focused on making sure that the person above you stays happy. You're not actually leading your team well, because you're basing it on someone else's ideas about how it's supposed to go, rather than communicating back and forth. And then burnout just becomes inevitable. And that this smushed leader trap comes from the myth that you have to hold it all together, that holding it all together is your job to do. When the reality is that your job is to create an environment where people can thrive. And that includes you. So instead of shielding, actually, I'm going to pause. I'm going to say that again. Your job is to create an environment where people can thrive, and that includes you. Do not have to sacrifice yourself in order to make that happen. To serve well, you have to stop shielding and start sharing. You cannot absorb everything and then just digest and like completely digest it for your team. Otherwise, you're like the mama bird who chews it all up and spits it out, and nobody wants that. So bring it to your team in the context of a conversation. Okay, so here's what we've been asked to do. How do you think we can make this work? Is this possible? Start the conversation with some curiosity and bring them in. That's how you move from shielding to sharing. And then you have to move from hustling to playing. A few months ago, we talked about play and productivity. You can go back and listen to those episodes, a solo episode with me, and then Jeff Harry, who's a play expert. We talked about play powering productivity. So when you're in that conversation, how do we make this work together? Think about play rather than, okay, how can we get this done the fastest, the most efficiently? Let's start thinking about play and effectiveness, which sometimes might take a little longer, but is better for you in the outcome. So in the long term, not only does play power productivity, it powers sustainability. So replace just how do we fix this with what's the most fun way to solve this? Or what's the most outrageous way to solve this? There are other models, but think about it like play, like an experiment. That shift will help you. And if you take the play personality quiz, you can rely on different people on your team based on their best ability to play. Because not everybody wants to brainstorm ideas. They want to know what they're supposed to do. Some people don't want to just know what they're supposed to do. They do want to brainstorm ideas, and that's fun for them. So when you're thinking about moving from hustling to playing, think about it in a playful way. I also, when I work with teams, there are a couple literal, I call them activities, but they're really games that we use that start to unlock what is stuck in your brain because you're like, how do we fix this? How do we fix this? How do we fix this? And so we pause for a moment, we think about the problem, and I have a game that we play. But while we're playing the game, we're still like letting the problem ruminate in the back of our brains, like keeping it a little bit in consciousness. And every time that happens, every time we come up with better solutions. And there's lots of brain science behind why that happens, but it's because we chose play. Play powers productivity. So we move from hustling to playing, and then move from absorbing to reflecting. And when things come from above, I want you to reflect back to your leader, their energy and expectations. Here's what I'm hearing you say. This is urgent, and here's what the expectation is. Yes, that is true. Or they might say, "Oh, no, it's not that urgent," because sometimes we add a lot of context to things that just aren't there. So reflect back to them. Here's what I'm hearing the timeline is, the urgency, the importance, and the expectations. Reflect it back. Don't just go and do. And then if you're feeling it, like, I don't think this is too much, you can say, okay, so here's what we said last week. Here's my list of tasks, responsibilities. I can't fit all of that in. Which one would you like to take priority right now? That's their decision. So reflect back to them rather than just absorbing it and say, I'm going to go do, reflect it back because we cannot do it all. And so you can reflect back and say, I can't do everything. So are there additional resources, or what of these would you like me to put on hold while we focus on this? Those are ways to ask that question to stop absorbing it all and reflecting. When I went back to grad school and was a little nutty to say I was going to complete my master's in 2 semesters, I could not have survived with that second grade strategy of sit at your desk, do the work, then you can play. I would have either completely burnt out because and just not finished, or I would have been less productive, learned less along the way, lower grades, or taken longer actually. I needed to be able to find joy and integrate that into what I was doing. Into the middle of my work, I needed to understand why I was doing it, how to bring some joy and play as a part of it, because the list was long. In addition to working, running a business, having a family, all of that was happening. I couldn't just work on grad school until I was done with that and then go to the next work thing and then go to the next work thing. And the same goes for you. Joy can't be like, well, when this project is over, or well, when this kid gets out of this, or it can't be an afterthought. Joy has to be the center. It is your best leadership tool and strategy. So here's my second challenge for you. Identify one way from this podcast that you are like, this is how I'm blocking joy. Either you're waiting until work is done, or you're absorbing it and you're not reflecting it, or you're hustling all the time, or you're trying to do everything. What is one way that you are blocking joy, which means you're blocking your productivity and you're blocking your own success. So pick one small thing and try to tweak it and change it. If you want some help, I would love to help you. Just shoot me an email. It's jen@jennwhitmer.com. Or if you want, I've got a couple specific programs, and you can ask me about the Joyosity Intensive or the Joyosity Jumpstart that I have. But you don't need a big corporate initiative to do that. You are CEO of your own desk. You are your own leader. And you can't lead anybody else until you lead yourself first. You're the one that gets to decide. That is my push for you today. And next week, we get to talk to Ron Tite. Oh my gosh, he's so good. He is a founder and owner of Church and State, which is an amazing agency. It's an award-winning agency. And he has a new book coming out and we're diving into how purpose ties into what we're talking about and the purpose of purpose. And you don't want to miss it because we have some really great things for you. Until then, I'm just going to repeat my little challenge. You don't need a big corporate initiative to see if you can stop absorbing it all or doing it all. That second grade homework strategy is not going to work for you as a leader in your job. You've got to find joy in the center. So find the one small way that you might be blocking joy and see if you can change just one thing. So let me put my coach hat on for just a moment. Don't just leave this here. Take a moment. What did you learn? What's your next tiny action step? Share this episode with someone and tell them what you're going to do. Check the show notes for all the links and connect with us on LinkedIn and all the other socials, or just, drop me an email at Jenn with 2 N's at jennwhitmer.com. We want to keep this conversation going with you. I know your earballs have a lot coming at them, so thank you for listening to the Joyosity podcast and being a part of our community. Please take a moment to rate and subscribe. It helps more people join us in the movement to create positive culture with complex people. So work is a joy, people are whole, and organizations flourish. Can't wait for you to join us next week.